7 Things You Didn't Know About the Creation of the Great Wave by Hokusai. Everyone has heard of the Japanese word manga, unless you've been living under a rock. No worries, we'll explain to you briefly. Manga, which roughly translates to random drawings, is now more generally linked with a Japanese comic that adheres to a style developed in Japan in the late 19th century. Guess who the first artist to use it was? That's right, Katsushika Hokusai. Although Hokusai's work is well known worldwide, very little is known about the painter himself. Ukiyo-e artists in the 1830s created woodblock prints featuring popular subjects such as Japanese kabuki players, sumo wrestlers, feminine beauty, and famous landscapes, translated as images of the floating world. They were Katsushika Hokusai's area of fascination and expertise. Hokusai began experimenting with several kinds of art and was influenced by smuggled-in French and Dutch engravings during a period when interaction with Western culture was prohibited. His woodblocks began to include elements of Western works' colors and perspective, entirely changing the ukiyo-e art form. When his mentor Shunko understood what had been happening, he kicked Hokusai out of the Katsukawa school, but it turned out to be a blessing in disguise. The disgrace I felt at Shunko's hands was what inspired the development of my creative style, Hokusai later observed. The Great Wave. Although Hokusai was wealthy in his middle years, a sequence of misfortunes like intermittent paralysis, the loss of his second wife, and significant misconduct by his wayward grandson left him in debt in his final years. As a result, the old artist channeled his rage into his painting, launching his famous 36 Views of Mount Fuji series. In 1830, the Great Wave became a part of the collection. Under the Wave off Kanagawa, commonly known as the Great Wave, has become one of the world's most famous works of paintings and the most iconic expression of Japanese art. Thousands of copies of this artwork were immediately printed and sold for a cheap cost initially. Even though it was created during a period when Japanese trade was severely restricted, Hokusai's print shows the influence of Dutch painting and served as an inspiration to many European artists working later in the 19th century. The arrival of Prussian blue in the market was another cause for the iconic collection of photographs. As a synthetic pigment, it lowered the price so much that the shade could be used in prints for the first time. Let's look at the 7 most enticing facts about the artwork in this video. Number 7. It's called a wave and conceals a mountain. Take a look at the right of the center. What you may have mistaken for another cresting wave is Japan's highest peak, Mount Fuji, which is snow-capped. It's a part of the 36 Views of Mount Fuji series for a reason. Mount Fuji does not usually take up the majority of the frame. Instead, a gigantic cresting wave fills the foreground here. The painting captures the frightening wave just minutes before crashing down on 3 fishing boats below. Julian H.E. Cartwright and Hisami Nakamura concluded in 2009 that the plunging wave is between 32 and 39 feet long, based on the size of the Oshiokuri Bune boats. There's a lot of visual fun in Under the Wave off Kanagawa. The mountain, which has been shrunk through perspective, appears to be about to be devoured by the wave. The spray from the top of the breaking wave seems like snow falling on the mountain, and Hokusai's optical trickery can be amusing. Number 6. It's a print series rather than a painting. Though Hokusai was also a painter, he's primarily renowned for his woodblock prints from the Edo period in Japan. The Great Wave off Kanagawa is the most well-known of his 36 Views of Mount Fuji series. Each print displays the towering peak from a distinct aspect and location, with brilliant color and fascinating use of space. Hokusai allegedly poured himself into his work and worked at a breakneck speed, rising early to paint and working late into the night. Paintings, sketches, woodblock prints, picture books, and even some saucy pictures are reported to have been produced by the artist. Unfortunately, a fire in 1839 destroyed much of his work and studio. Number 5. The many names of Hokusai. While it was customary for Japanese artists to alter their identities, Hokusai had at least 30 distinct names during his lifetime, more than any other artist of the time. In 1779, he published a series of works under the name Shunro, which he received from his first mentor, Shuncho. The Japanese printmaker's signature can be discovered in the Great Wave's upper left-hand corner. From the brush of Hokusai, who changed his name to Iitsu, it reads. Later in life, he was known as Gakyo Rojin Manji, which translates to the old man mad about art. His surnames were frequently employed to distinguish between various types and periods of creation. Number 4. It's an inspiration worldwide. The Japanese government imposed isolationist laws during Hokusai's lifetime, preventing outsiders from entering and citizens from leaving. That didn't stop his work from impacting some of the most well-known figures in Western art history. Many outstanding artists, including Claude Monet, Vincent van Gogh, and Edgar Degas, appreciated and acquired Hokusai's prints when they were presented at the 1867 International Exposition in Paris, 22 years after his death. Claude Debussy's symphonic composition, La Mer, was inspired by the Great Wave. The Great Wave of Kanagawa has been embraced by current Western culture and may be seen on t-shirts, tattoos, emojis, contemporary artworks, beer advertising, and book covers, among other things. Initial impressions of the classic print can be found at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City, the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, the British Museum, and the National Gallery of Victoria. Number 3. It has more than one version. You may not be aware that there are numerous expressions of the Great Wave and no single definitive version. The British Museum, for example, has 3 impressions in its collection. The Metropolitan Museum of Art has 4, and the Maidstone Museum in the United Kingdom has one that was recently featured in the exhibition Japan, A Floating World in Print. The cost of woodblock prints was low. In the mid-19th century, a print of the Great Wave cost roughly the same as 2 helpings of noodles, and prints of a specific design were created as long as people were eager to buy them. Number 2. Japanese politicians did not view it as real art. The Great Wave of Kanagawa gained such acclaim that it became the world's defining representation of Japanese art and culture. But here's the thing. In Japan, woodblock prints were not thought of as art. They were seen as a popular medium of expression and commercial printing. Woodblock prints, which were once only used for Buddhist text, have become synonymous with poetry and romance novel pictures. As a result, officials in Japan's government and art historians seem less than impressed that such a supposedly lowbrow art form had come to represent them. Isn't it amusing to learn about the world's best and most creative minds in their prime? How remarkable are the stories that surround their works? For more such trivia, subscribe to the channel, hit like and share the video with other art fanatics. Hit the bell icon for updates on our latest videos. With that, let's dive into the trivia once more. Number 1. The creation of the Great Wave was a savvy money-making move. As mentioned earlier, the artist went through turbulent times later in his life and needed business. Hokusai had a knack for creating his own cult following, often through contentious public demonstrations of his creative prowess. There are tales of him impressing large crowds of people to market his paintings and prints. In 1804, he painted a 180-meter-long image of a Buddhist monk with a broom during a festival in Edo. Years later, he promoted his best-selling sketchbook series with a 3-story-high piece showing Zen Buddhism's founder. Many people see Mount Fuji as sacred. As a result, it's developed a cult following. So, it was a no-brainer to create a series of portrait prints that could be mass-produced and marketed at low prices. However, as tourism to Japan grew, the prints resurfaced as part of a burgeoning souvenir industry, mainly if they represented the country's most gorgeous mountain. Hokusai was also a prolific painter who rose with the sun and worked until late at night. It's partly owing to the extraordinary length of his career, which began in 1779 and ended when he died in 1849 at the age of 89. Ei, also known as Oi, his youngest daughter, became an artist in her own way after assisting her father in creating his prints. Miss Hokusai, a manga series and anime film, is based on Ei's life. It feels like a complete circle, doesn't it?